Now on Facebook Live and Radiobuzzd.com, this is the Teresa Van-Zeller Show.
Hello, and welcome to all of you. Once again, our viewership is growing very rapidly, so I'm thinking you're liking what we're giving you, and I hope to be able to continue that in the future. For the last few weeks, I have had special guests. However, today, you get just me because I'm going to be talking about something very near and dear to my heart, and that is pain. I've worked with an awful lot of clients, and it's very rewarding for me to work with pain management because they always get benefit. It's just a fact. And we're going to discuss a few reasons why, and whether you experience pain or you have a loved one that experiences pain. This is stuff that can definitely help some people who are absolutely stuck in bed, debilitated, to gain back quality of life. And the good news is that the power is within you to make those changes, and you are not stuck with this situation. What you might think is forever. You will get immediate improvements. I won't always guarantee 100%, but many, oftentimes 100%. First and foremost, I need to remind all of you that I am not a medical doctor, so I would not even consider working with a client for pain management without getting that referral from their doctor first. Why? Because pain is for a reason. It's to tell you that something is wrong with your body, even emotional pain, that there's something that's causing dis-ease. That's where the word disease in my book comes from, dis-ease. So once I get a doctor referral and realize that there is no medical reason, and I'll tell you exactly why. I'm going to be mentioning clients that I've worked with in the past just to bring my point home. I had a neighbor come to me. We were quite close. I'd known her for years. And all of a sudden, she started experiencing terrible headaches. And so bad that she came and said, Teresa, can you help me with these headaches I'm having? And I said, well, they're all going to be Jane or Joe, by the way, or John. These are not real names I'm using. And I said, well, Joan, we need to get a medical referral because we've got to make sure there's nothing physiologically wrong with you. As it turns out, thank God we did, because she ended up having a brain tumor. Had I removed the pain entirely, and I don't mean me personally, I mean helped her to remove the pain entirely, which is absolutely possible because there are some people that cannot take anesthesia and they need surgeries. And hypnosis is their only option. We work with somebody usually at least 2 or 3 months before we get to that point, but they have done over 20 open heart surgeries, C-sections, amputations, major abdominal surgery with nothing more than hypnosis. So it can be quite effective. It's just that sometimes, I can help turn it down, but we never want to remove pain unless we're positive that everything is physically okay with you. And in working with clients, sometimes we can cut right to the middle of the onion, with the middle of the onion being the issue causing the problem. Other times we have to peel that onion away layer by layer until we get down to it. But whether it's a permanent injury or a chronic injury, we can turn it down or even eliminate once the doctor says, yeah, that's okie dokie, go ahead and take it away. I have a client, John, who came to me years ago with RSD. That is a disease that only 3 million people in the United States known cases. And when he came to me, I was literally his last hope. And a lot of people think I'm too intelligent for hypnosis or I'm not intelligent enough for hypnosis. And the fact of the matter is, that's just not true. Fact of the matter is, this man had his PhD in biophysics, another one in biochemistry, then became a marriage and family counselor. And 2.5 years ago, he got hit by a car while standing by his car. He was thrown across the street. He was in a coma for 5 months. And he basically got crushed in his shoulder and arm. He had absolutely no use of his left arm. The first time he came to me, he was in such pain, and he told me that this had happened 2.5 years ago. And he had been on a pain scale from 1 to 10, 1 being no pain, 10 being severe pain. For the last 2.5 years, his pain level was at a level 8. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Maybe 3 times in the past 2.5 years did he actually feel like he was down to a level 3, which was manageable, but only for maybe 20 or 30 seconds. So I was literally his last hope. He'd been to every type of therapy, physical therapy, chiropractors. One time he said, "Teresa, I'm even putting my feet in buckets of red sludge to suck the negative ions out of me." So I knew he was in a great deal of pain. And quite frankly, I was a little intimidated because he was so extremely intelligent and yet had a very open mind, because the number one thing with hypnosis is if somebody wants help, it works. They want the help and it works. So in my opinion, before I totally get into the story, with chronic pain and persistent pain, there are different types of reasons that can cause it after there is no longer a physiological pain. The number one reason in my book is fight or flight. And let's talk about it. We've all heard of fight, flight, or freeze. When something bad happens, let's say you're walking down a dark, I'm using cheat notes, I'm sorry, so forgive me. You're walking down a dark aisle or alleyway, and there's people approaching you and they have a gun. We have this wonderful mechanism that our body does in a nanosecond, and it releases tons of catecholamine. Those are stress hormones, adrenaline, epinephrine, anything that's going to, what it does is it takes all the blood and oxygen from anything in your body that is not under immediate threat, and it ships that blood and oxygen to your arms and to your legs so that you can either fight for your life or run for your life. And it's a wonderful mechanism. The problem is your brain doesn't understand the difference between a life and death threat or any kind of other stress. So if you have to get up and give a speech in front of 200 people and you're terrified of public speaking, your body will still release those stress hormones, and now you get foggy and you might, be the deer in the headlight. You have all this emotion coming up because you're not able to fight or flight. So what happens is you internalize it. And different other ideas is if you start work and 2 months ago you started not getting along with somebody and you want to choke the living daylights out of them for whatever reason, which we would never do, fight or flight will kick in because you're upset about that situation. And maybe you'll be so mad that because you're not fighting or flighting, you'll start shaking. Or if you have to get up and do that presentation, your stomach will get upset or you'll get lightheaded. Panic attacks are one of the easiest things for me to work with. Other people have said, oh, that's one of the hardest things. No, one session is all I've ever needed to work with someone with panic attacks. Because what happens is something happened in their past that caused them to have a scary situation. And their heart started beating faster, and the first thing we stop doing is breathing properly. So your head gets lightheaded, and then the room can spin. I've worked with people that can't even walk out of their house. They've actually become agoraphobic because of their fear of panic attacks. Now, I'm actually going to ask you to do an exercise with me, and this is stuff you'll be able to take for the rest of your life. I'm going to ask you just for a second to learn how to do a cleansing breath, meaning inhale through your nose and blow it out through an open mouth. Do that 2 or 3 times, each time a little slower than the last one. What that does is get your mind focused on breathing, which is the first thing we stop doing in any situation, whether it's a good excitement or a bad excitement. we stop breathing properly. So the first thing I teach them to do is how to take 2 or 3 slow, deep breaths. And it's going to give you a 10 count and let your head clear. And then I'll have you close your eyes and take 3 slow, deep breaths in and exhale gradually with your mouth closed this time. Do that 2 more times, a little bit slower. And on the 3rd breath, as you're exhaling with your eyes closed, I'll say, by the way, you're relaxing beautifully, but whatever you do, do not think about a purple elephant on a red fire truck. At which person the person then starts laughing. There's a couple of things that we've accomplished just then. One is we've automatically started the relaxation process. And by the way, if you actually practice that exercise afterwards, I could say, oh, and by the way, welcome to the world of hypnosis. That's all it is starting to turn inward and choose that it's time to relax. But what it also shows is that the minute I said, don't think of a purple elephant on a red fire truck, you have to think about it, even if your very next thought is don't think about it. So why is this so effective? We learn to focus on what we want, the desired goal, rather than what we don't want, because no matter what you're thinking about, the language of your subconscious mind is images. It's the words you're saying to yourself, not the words, but the images it's creating. So in the course of somebody with panic attacks, a lot of times they'll walk into a room and see a group of people, and the first thought in their head is, oh, please don't let me have a panic attack right now. At which point that is the same thing to your brain. It doesn't recognize the not, just it's panic attack time, and your heart will start beating faster, and then you're depriving oxygen to your brain. You might get dizzy, lightheaded. Some people actually pass out. And instead, we can't always stop those negative thoughts. Usually we can't stop the negative thoughts from coming into our brain, but that's okay as long as we now recognize this is just a negative thought process. I can cancel that and take a slow, deep breath in and feel the relaxation as I exhale. Now, this is a technique you can do every day of your life, and I would strongly recommend everybody should do that 2 or 3 times a day. 2 or 3 slow, deep breaths. And as you exhale, mark my words, your life will change. It sounds like such a big claim over something so easy, but let's look at that person with the panic attack. They walked in. Oh God, please don't let me have a panic attack. No, cancel that. I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths. First thing that happens, they're taking in the oxygen they wouldn't have been taking in had they not learned this. Maybe 2 or 3 breaths in the beginning, but after a while, that one slow, deep breath is going to give you the 10 count. It's going to oxygenate your brain. Your brain's not going to get lightheaded anymore. Therefore, your heart doesn't need to be faster to try to get brain to get oxygen to an area that you're in too much of a state to do. And all I've done in one session is teach people how to breathe and also educate them as to why it's been happening this way. And I've never had anybody not need the clients that I've seen, I've never had anybody need to come more than one time over a situation that has been bothering them sometimes for years. So there's just so many benefits to the simple thing of breathing. So let's go back to John Doe, who came in with the RSD. I was his last hope. And the first time he came in, I was able to, very good, he believed in hypnosis, so he was very easily relaxed down. And for the first time in 2.5 years, we got him down to a level 3, which was already a miracle to him. I always say hypnosis is not a miracle cure, but we get miraculous results. And it really is that simple. He actually stayed at that level 3 for 3 hours afterwards. which was just phenomenal. By the second session, I worked with him and we got him to a level 0, feeling no pain for the first time in 2.5 years. Now, remember, we can use hypnosis to turn off all sensation, to do major surgeries, but this was something that he was able to do, that I was able to work with him, and 0 pain the whole time he was with me, and that lasted for a while. But I also noticed something in that second session is, as we were talking, because he found this so phenomenal, he started talking to me about his pain and how it comes up on him. And as he was talking, you can't see my feet right now, so pretend this is a foot. As he was talking, his foot was tapping. And then you could tell that he was really getting into that imagery of his pain. And his foot started tapping faster and faster and faster. And all of a sudden, this man just lunged forward, grabbed his arm, and started screaming at the top of his lungs. He was in such agony. I won't lie, scared the bejeebers out of me. Instinct took over, and I just said, "Stop that." And it jolted him, and he was on attention. "Close your eyes and take a deep breath." And he closed his eyes, and he took the deep breath. And I used one of the pain management techniques. And quite frankly, I use the techniques from my birthing classes that I teach for pregnant mommies. And he said, I won't use the expletive, bleeping believe this. And he was able to go from that intense agony to total relaxation with no pain. Now, what had happened is, when you think about a bad thing and you're visualizing that bad thing, in this case, it was this unbearable pain that he's been in, your imagination knows very well how to get you to experience this pain, and it brings you right back there. And all of a sudden, now he's tense. And what happens in fight or flight? Everything is shipped from your torso, other than heart beating, lungs breathing. Everything else is shipped so you can fight or flee. So by him getting upset like this, his body released all the stress hormones, and his body tensed up, and he ended up going right to the place where he's been trying to avoid. So that was an important milestone for him, because you can't always stop the thought, but he now learned how, if that thought comes in, he can just do his self-hypnosis or take some deep breaths, and it's going to get better, which is why I find this so rewarding, because every pain, most pain, when it's not pathologically, physiologically a reason for it, most pain will automatically be minimized the minute you start to relax your body. Now, I have to tell you that within 2 months, this man who was bedridden, I didn't know he was 6'4". When he came in, he was slunched over. This arm was hanging. Within 2 months, this man was back to walking 2 miles a day. He was back to putting on his keynote speaker presentations, back to his practice of marriage and family counseling. It was a totally life-altering change for him, and he is now leading a very productive life. I use the techniques that I use in my Birthing as Nature Intended classes, which I'm going to go ahead and show you, just because even for pain management, Birthing as Nature Intended, a guide to achieving the birth you envision, actually has the techniques that I use with my clients. We were also able to turn the pain on and off and on and off. Intense pain, no pain. Intense pain with nothing more than a snap of the fingers or a count to 3. And he learned that he was the one in control over this. And it's not to say that this issue was in his mind. He has a very real issue, but it didn't have to be the intense, debilitating issue that it had been up to this point. And by turning it on and off, it also got to the point that he could come to me driving himself now instead of having his wife drive him. And from the minute he got in the car, across town, about a 45-minute drive. He was in no pain. And all the way here, and the whole time he was here, and all the way home. But then when he got home, the pain was back. Well, without going into a lot of detail, there's another type of pain. It's called secondary gain. And sometimes there are outside issues that cause someone to hang on to the pain. Remember I said sometimes we have to peel at that onion? Well, this man was so intellectual and so brilliant, and yet he never lived up to his father's expectations. And at that point, we realized that by not being functional, he didn't have to live up. He had an excuse. He also didn't accept it. And I also told him at that point, John, you need to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist to help, because I'm not a medical doctor. And these were issues that between us, we were able to work out. And it was absolutely wonderful. Now, how does hypnosis help with pain? Few different ways. Well, only a few which I'm going to mention. One is the release of endorphins. We talked about the stress hormones when you get fight or flight that make you tense up, but endorphins are also a gift from God. Nature provides us with it. And when you release endorphins, I have to tell you, that is even more powerful than morphine, than heroin, than any synthetic drug. The difference is, it's not going to be bad for you. You're never going to release more than what is safe for your optimal health and well-being. Just never going to happen. Your subconscious mind always protects you. But this release of endorphins is not just for pain. It's also when you're feeling really good and you're with a loved one and they bring you roses, or you're snuggling up and you have that warm, fuzzy feeling. Endorphins are released to relax you, to get rid of pain, to give you that feeling of love and euphoria. And we can control that. They're automatically going to be released. If you've got those stress hormones being released at the same time, that can counter affect the endorphins. But it will not, when you keep the stress out of it, all you get are the endorphins. So option A, one way, is teaching you how to increase your endorphin release. And simply teaching you self-hypnosis, which I always do, you will always release endorphins when you start to go into that relaxed mode, because hypnosis, relaxation, two words can be synonymous in a lot of cases. There's different levels, different depths, but it's just relaxation. Just like when you close your eyes and take 3 slow, deep breaths, when you open your eyes, you've experienced a light state of hypnosis. Your eyes, you can look in a mirror right after, will even have a slight glaze over them, like you have just had a deep sleep, and yet you're aware the whole time. The second way that hypnosis can help is, like I talked about, they've done open heart surgeries, C-sections, etc. Well, you can turn off the pain signals, not me. You as the client can turn off the signals that your brain is sending to your body, because nothing below here can feel anything unless your brain sends the signal. So we can actually teach you the techniques to turn off the signals on and off, turn it down, turn it up. So those techniques are extremely powerful. The third thing is that teaching that you can't always stop the thought of pain or the bad thing, which is kicking in, fight or flight, but you can immediately recognize it, know what to say to yourself, automatically take that deep breath and replace it with a feeling of relaxation and a major endorphin push. So that's just some of the ways that hypnosis can help with pain management. What I'm going to also say right now is that we are going to have call-ins. If anybody would like to call in and ask questions in a few minutes, our number is 661-249-9444. That's 661-249-9444. I welcome your comments. I welcome your calls. If you have a question, ask it. I'll be more than happy to get into it with you. So let me take a minute now and talk about pain management and childbirth, because this is obviously very near and dear to my heart. And when I first learned about using hypnosis, I thought it was all about just making it so the woman did not feel anything. Nothing is further from the case. The fact of the matter is, this is a very deep, dark secret. Having a baby is the most normal, natural, basic, physiological, fundamental part of life. There is nothing about birth that should be painful. Let me say that again. There's nothing about birth that should be painful unless there's a medical reason. Sometimes it's just a matter of changing positions because the baby's laying on a nerve or something. But unless there is a physiological reason, and there is nothing physiologically wrong with birth, there's no reason for it to hurt. I can't go by my own two experiences. I had ridiculously painful experiences, and I didn't learn about this stuff till 20 years later. And I always tease my students. I say, if I got pregnant tomorrow, okay, I'd probably kill myself because I'm 58 years old, but teasing. But what I would really love to do is experience birth the way that I've seen women experience beautiful, ecstatic births. Yes, a couple of women have even experienced orgasm while giving birth. Can I say that on radio? I hope. But it's true. Having a baby is the epitome of female sexuality, and it would stand to reason that it should feel good. But that's just not what we're taught. So we're going to talk about how fight or flight plays into pain with childbirth, because that's what it's about. Except for the very rare circumstance, less than 1% of the time, that there is a physiological reason for it. The reason childbirth is painful for most women is because fight or flight is kicked in. Why? Because they're trained to be fearful. I can tell you, and this was my class that I took 35 years ago with my husband. And the very first childbirth class I took was over at the hospital with a nurse teaching the class, and it was a Lamaze class. And in the first class, I did not go into this with a particular fear of birth. In fact, when I was a kid, believe it or not, back in the 60s and early 70s, people didn't talk about childbirth the way they do now. I did not go into this particularly fearful. I didn't know anything. I was excited, a little anticipatory, but not really fearful until I took my first class. And this instructor was teaching us, I'm going to be teaching you these breathing exercises, because when the pain gets to this point, we're going to use this breathing exercise. And it was, and then when the pain gets worse, we're going to switch to this exercise, which is great way to hyperventilate. And by the way, you're supposed to be looking at some focal point. For me, it was a green stuffed alligator, which I ended up shredding after I had the baby, by the way. And I swear to you, I remember it like yesterday. She then said, and when the pain gets so bad that you feel like a train is running through your body at 150 miles an hour and you can't stop it, then we're going to switch to this breathing. And you could have heard a pin drop in that room after that. For those of us that weren't particularly frightful, I don't know who was worse, the moms who were terrified or the dads who thought, oh my God, what have I put my wife through that she has to deal with this? So let's jump forward to the day I go into labor. I didn't know I was in labor. I sat on a couch watching a talk show that you watch when you find yourself off work suddenly on maternity leave. And all I felt was a gurgling. Just a gurgling sensation. Absolutely nothing. Thought I might have to use the toilet. Got up and used it. Came back. A few minutes later, same thing. No pain, no nothing, just a gurgling. Got up and down a few more times. I was a little slow on the uptake. And after about 3 hours of this, all of a sudden I looked at my watch and I thought, these gurgling sensations are coming exactly 3.5 minutes apart You could set your watch by it. And that was the first instant that my labor started to hurt. And the other thing our instructor taught us was this was going to be the most excruciatingly painful experience of your life. But I'm going to give you these breathing techniques to help deal with it. So at the moment I realized that these gurgling sensations was labor, that was the first contraction that hurt. And believe it or not, it got progressively worse until it was the most excruciating experience of my life. What happened? Nothing more than a thought process happened. For every thought that goes through your mind, there is a physiological response. Happy, loving thoughts release endorphins. Stressful, worried thoughts create catecholamine, stress hormones, the epinephrine, to ship everything to your arms and legs to fight or flight. Now, this is why this works so well for all types of pain too. But for a laboring woman, her baby is inside of a uterus, which is considered both an organ and a muscle. And this uterus has got 3 layers of tissue. 3 layers of muscle fibers. The inner layer, and hopefully you can see this, starts out with horizontal circles that get smaller. They wrap around smaller, 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 smaller until you get very small. And that's the cervix, which is eventually going to have to open up to allow the baby out. The middle layer just supplies blood and oxygen to all the cells in your uterus. And the outer layer has vertical muscles that start at the top and come down like this. And when you have a contraction, what's happening is these outer muscles are going to draw up to allow this to relax open. And then you're going to rest for a few minutes, and then you'll get another one, and you're going to relax open, 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 open until you're exactly 10 centimeters, not 9 1/4, not 10 5/8, whether you're 4 feet tall or 10 feet tall. Nature is very precise. That woman will open up to exactly 10 centimeters, which incidentally, if you want to take a ruler out, every human being, this distance, no matter how big you are, is exactly 10 centimeters. I found that rather amazing. Nature's got this wired. So what happened with the thought process? I now think, oh, this might be labor. And all of a sudden, my fear kicked in because I had been prepared for this excruciating experience. All the blood and oxygen is taken away, even from the uterus, and shipped to your arms and legs so that you can run or fight. What that does to the muscles, baby's going to get protected at all times, is these horizontal muscles are going to clamp down like a vice. So now when you have these muscles pulling up, you got 2 sets of muscles fighting each other. And a lot of medical professionals will say, well, the reason labor hurts is because you got 2 sets of muscles fighting each other. Let's talk about that for a second. And this is audience participation time. Just hold your arm out and bend it up and straighten it out again and hold it up here. There's nothing painful about that because it's a natural movement. Everybody does it. What's happening for this arm to go from straight to a 45-degree angle is your biceps have to shorten to draw up, and your triceps have to relax so that the movement can be made. And then in reverse, to straighten it, your triceps are going to shorten or pull up, and these are going to relax down so you can open it. There's nothing painful about that. But put some fight or flight into it. Hold that same arm out now, and what happens with fight or flight? You're going to tense. That's the net because you're ready to save your life. And if you tighten that arm as hard as you can and you try to bend it, how long do you think you could do that before you're saying, give me the epidural, give me drugs, give me whatever? The good news is the minute you relax back down again, it stops hurting and it goes back to normal. Every set of muscles in your body works on the same push-pull system. I don't care if you're turning your neck or bending at the waist or moving your legs. That's what allows the movement. One set draws the movement, the other one relaxes to allow it. Even your eyes, I found this fascinating. Even your eyes have got two little sets of those same muscles on both sides of the eyes. And if one muscle is too tight or too relaxed, that's what causes nearsightedness or farsightedness. I just find this so amazing. So when you are afraid of childbirth, your body's going to tense and your body does not get to react the way it should. Perfect example is how many women have been in comas and pregnant, and when it comes time for the baby to be born, well, A, she's unconscious. B, they're not going to give her any drugs because, well, A, she's unconscious, but B, there's no need. Almost every one of those babies is born in under 2 hours. What's the difference? Without any help, no pushing the baby out, no special breathing techniques, her body is going to do this on its own because that uterine muscle is so perfectly designed that once you get this motion that opens you up to 10 centimeters, guess what? Without any effort, these outer muscles change and they will begin to draw up and push and they will expel your baby. And in the olden days, before we had all these fears put into us, that's exactly how bodies responded. And most babies were born in 1 to 2 hours because we stay out of our body's way that way. And that's the thing with the difference between a painful childbirth and a non-painful one. Because when you get out of your body's way, your body is fully oxygenated and it absolutely will respond. And not only will it know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, all you need to do is relax and stay out of its way. It will usually go trouble-free, no complications, and quickly. And even if it's a longer labor, 2 hours or 22 hours, you could do this for 22 hours. You're doing this and you might last 10 minutes. But once you get yourself back to where you can relax, your body will function perfectly and normally. And it really is that simple. And that's why I have the passion that I do about working, A, with pregnant couples, but B, pain management in general, because if that's happening to a uterus and you've got an arm injury or anything else, the same thing is happening. And just simply learning to A, do your physical therapy, build up your muscles or whatever. But if there's no physiological reason, it's about learning to relax your body and allow it to do what it's known how to do. Something bad happened to cause the injury, but it got better. And if you're still experiencing pain, that's because you're thinking about it and you're bringing it on. I'm not saying it's in your head. It's a very real pain. You can't always stop that fear of the pain, but you can cancel that and use your techniques to get right back into that relaxed state so that everything is working normally again. And I hope this makes sense to you. So, like I said, the book that I wrote, Birthing as Nature Intended, is not only for birthing parents or expectant parents. You will get all sorts of tidbits in there about pain management, as well as how your brain works, how to talk to your mind. Self-talk is very important because if I say, don't think about purple elephants on red fire trucks, you have no choice but to think it. If you don't want to think about purple elephants on red fire trucks, cancel that. Green trees, beautiful oceans, and it changes the whole thought process. And those endorphins are going to be pummeling and you're going to feel much better. And just using the breathing techniques, seriously, just using the breathing techniques a few times a day. We live such fast-paced lives now. Stress comes in all sorts to every human being. I have the same stresses you do, maybe different particular situations, but the only difference with me is the way I let it affect me or what I choose to do with it, and the way somebody who hasn't been taught how to deal with it. And it's not even dealing with it. It's just like letting your body get back to functioning the way it wants to function. I'm going to tell you about one of the women that I did attend her birth, and she did have a particularly long labor. And here's the deal. When it comes to childbirth, she took the class, but she really grabbed the whole concept that it was never supposed to be painful to begin with. She was terrified when she started the class, but by the end of that first class, she was downright excited. And I did attend the birth. Felt kind of bad because I didn't do anything. She sat there chit-chatting through the whole thing, didn't lay down, didn't do the walking, sat on the bed. We chit-chat for hours. And her way was she just knew she had to relax during each contraction. So she'd be in mid-sentence. And yeah, Teresa, I went to the store yesterday. Hold on, I'm having one. Okay, like I was saying, when I went to the store, and she just went on with this whole story for 19 hours. And of course, the medical staff didn't even believe that she was in labor. Finally, after 19 hours, she says to me, "Oh my God." I said, "What? What's wrong?" And she said, "I haven't brushed my teeth in 24 hours. And she jumped off the bed with her IV, which I'm not even going to get into that right now, the need of that. But she took her little IV. She went to the bathroom. She brushed her teeth. She got back into bed, and she proceeded to chit-chat with me until she was 10 centimeters, at which point a very interesting thing happened. I didn't know it could happen. At 10 centimeters, she's ready to bring this baby down. And no, we don't do the purple pushing because the body will do that naturally. But when it came to 10 centimeters, her contractions stopped. And that can be common for 10, 15 minutes, but it stopped for 3 hours. And finally, the doctor came in and said, we're not going to have this baby unless you have contractions, because she had no issues. Nothing was wrong with her. Her labor just stopped. And she looked at me and I said, "Well, honey, I can't give you advice. I'm not a doctor, but, doctor's saying we can't have a baby without contractions." She finally agreed to Pitocin, which the second they gave her that first little bit, she had a baby in her arms 20 minutes later. And it was an absolutely wonderful experience for her. She even had my name plastered across her card, Teresa Van-Zeller, painless childbirth, on her car. And people would call me all over and I'd say, "No, that's not my car you're behind. That's my client. But thank you. Yes, I can make an appointment." It was really nice. But when I realized the births that I have seen, the beautiful births that I have seen, it breaks my heart, because the miserable experiences I had, I realized they were given to me. And I wish I had had the opportunity of knowing then what I know now. And I think it just would have been so much more pleasurable. I would never encourage somebody to have a baby at home. My little accountant side of my brain used to say, "Oh, how could you be so irresponsible?" Now, if I was to find out I was pregnant, I would be the one having the birthing tub in my family room with my dog by my side and the kids coming in. If the midwife came, fine. If she didn't, I have two perfectly capable hands. That's how much I trust the birthing process. And the techniques that I use to teach them, I use for myself when I get a little headache, and I will just do my relaxation and the headache goes away. Or if I've hurt my back, again, turning it down, because pain is to remind you, especially if you have a slipped disc or something. That's why we don't take the pain away. It has to remind you not to overextend yourself. You're still treating an injury. But once you're healed, there's no reason for that pain anymore. And sometimes, oftentimes, it's just that learned behavior that your mind adopted while you needed it that's still hanging on to. And a simple little visit to your local hypnotherapist can help get you back on track to relearn the way your body was intended to function. And it will come through for you every single time. Chris, how are we doing on time?
We're about ready to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. That was quick. So yes, I never guarantee that all pain is going to go pain-free, but many have been pain-free. Many have been ecstatic. Pain management clients always get benefit. at least reduction and oftentimes eliminating it. And it is absolutely the most wonderful thing in the world for me to work with people on that, because it's such an easy fix with just learning your basics. So before we go, do we have 2 more minutes? 1 minute?
Sure.
I'm going to teach you. Okay, he's good. He's nice to me. I love my producer. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to teach you the 2 things. I already taught you one breathing technique, which is just to take a good old-fashioned cleansing breath and blow it out. You get rid of up to 70% of the poisons and toxins in your body. If you're angry, stop and take a couple of slow, deep breaths. For no reason, stop and take a couple of slow, deep breaths. I am telling you, your whole outlook, how you deal with stress and everything will change. And if there is a discomfort, make sure that you check with your medical professional to make sure that there's nothing pathologically or physiologically wrong. But once you get that, know that there are many options out there that can help you, they don't even need to take more than 1 or 2 sessions. And like I said, if you look at my book, there will be some of those techniques in there, but I also have my website, hypnosis2000.com. I would be happy to answer your questions, even if it's just of a personal nature. I will never give out medical advice, but I will give you the questions to ask and then help you accordingly with that. So with that being said, I'm going to sign off for this week. I hope this was informative to you. Hope to see you next week. A better life, a better you. This is Teresa Van-Zeller signing off.
You've been watching the Teresa Van-Zeller Show every week here on Facebook Live and syndicated on Radiobuzzd.com. Join us next week at 1 p.m.